Australia is going to be the third leg of the tour for Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and after the island nation visit concludes, he'll be heading there. There's already been a lot of talk about it. Ahead of Prime Minister's Australia visit, the Prime Minister of the country decided to welcome PM Modi. Albanese has said talks on trade and investment are on agenda, committed to stable, secure Indo-Pacific region. India-Australia ties have never been closer than this. Prime Minister Modi will also be meeting the Indian diaspora as he usually does in Sydney. Remember, Sydney, or generally in Australia, there is a massive population of the Indian diaspora, and before that meeting begins, we will have the interaction between Australian Prime Minister Albanese and also Prime Minister Modi as well. So let's go across directly to Sydney this morning. Joining me, my colleague Vishal Monga on the ground. Vishal, good morning, and all set there, all action will be where you are now. What kind of arrangements and preparations have been made? A lot of focus was on cultural trade ties in Japan, in the island nations. What are we looking at in Australia?
See, Australia is an important destination for Prime Minister Modi. Now, in the third part, he's coming to Australia. Earlier, it was the Quad meeting which was cancelled due to President Biden not coming to Australia. That meeting has already taken place in Japan. But here, what we are going to see is huge welcome of Prime Minister Narendra Modi by the Indian diaspora. What I can tell you is that a lot of Indians have flown from several cities of Australia to Sydney. A special chartered flight took place from Melbourne to Sydney, where a lot of Indians have gathered here. Tomorrow, at around in the evening, around 5 o'clock, there'll be a big welcome function at the Sydney Olympic Stadium, and there'll be a huge gathering of at least 30,000 people that is expected. But indeed, what I can tell you is that the cultural ties between India and Australia are on the high. The most important thing is because of China. Now, Australia sees India as one of the most important market for its products. So that is why the relations between India and Australia on the trade fronts are going to improve. Although the Quad meeting, which was to happen earlier, is not taking place, but indeed the bilateral ties and the trade ties, which will be very important for the relationship between Australia and India, would be taking place, where both the leaders would discuss about how Australia could be a strategic partner for India. The most important thing
there's going to be a lot of discussions, that means, on strategic ties, trade and culture as well as important. Stay on with me, Vishal, because an Indian can leave Australia, an Indian can leave the country, settle in Australia, but there's not going to be that flavor that will be missing. So even in Australia, with a lot of buzz about arrival of Prime Minister Modi, what are Indians saying? Listen into this.
भरा पड़ा हुआ है और वो जोश और उमंग को भरते हुए जैसे दिवाली जैसा माहौल में बोल सकता हूँ कि लोगों ने अपनी तैयारी रखी है। चालू दिन है, वीकडेज है, लोगों ने छुट्टी लेके रखी हुई है और ओवरवेलमिंग रिस्पांस के लोग अभी टिकट के लिए मारामारी चल रही है। हमारी टिकट लाओ, हमारी टिकट लाओ, हमारी टिकट लाओ। तो ये है
relationship between India and Australia, culturally, in terms of migration movement, in terms of business in particular, is a vital connection that needs to be made. We of course, are part of the Quad deal. We have a free trade agreement with India. We move an enormous amount of trade. I think it's really important to reflect on the value of dealing with not only the largest population in the world, but also an economy that's moving towards the largest in the world. This is vital for all sectors of our industry, whether we're talking about primary industry, where we're with mining or with livestock, or whether we're talking about tertiary industries and when we're talking about high-tech involvement in IT. It's a really important, really valuable connection that we have with India and the Indian community.
So let's go across live again to my colleague Vishal Monga on the latest on that. Vishal, sure, the Indian diaspora has settled in Australia, but the excitement also with regard to country back home or Indian Prime Minister or just the interactions around, surely there will be a lot of excitement. Do tell us, what's the discussion on the ground? Are there going to be massive arrangements made by the Indian diaspora for Prime Minister Modi?
Yes, indeed, massive celebrations are planned out for Prime Minister Narendra Modi when he lands tonight at 8 o'clock here in Australia. What I can tell you is Sydney is home to thousands of Indians, and Harris Park is one of the most important places where a lot of Indians live. that is also called Mini India. Now, just next to Harris Park is the Sydney Olympic Park, where there'll be a gathering of around 20 to 30,000 people who are expected to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Indians from large number have gathered here in Sydney from various cities like Melbourne, Perth. There have been chartered flights that have been going on. You heard the person saying that several people have taken a day off and they want to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi here in Sydney. They want to show them that the Prime Minister of India is most welcome, and they want to really deepen the tie between India and Australia. Not only the strategic ties, but also the cultural ties. Now, I was around in the area and I could see a lot of preparations being made. Some of the Indians also wanted that in Harris Park, he should really put in a foundation stone declaring that as Mini India, but the council approval has not been taken place, so it can't be done that. But indeed, if I can tell you, is there is a lot of expectation, and also a lot of people are waiting for the visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi here in Sydney.